Hello everyone, my name is Legend Ronnie and this game is Rise of Kingdoms, and oh my god, do we have a lot to talk about this commander? Yes we do. Today is gonna be Alexander the Great Commander Spotlight. Now you guys already know that I'm talking about each and every commander. When they come out I usually do the first review. So whenever they introduce new commanders I do the first review, and later on I usually do the commander Spotlight, where I actually finalize my opinion about a commander. Now let's get started and let's start talking about him, because there is a lot to talk about him. Right, he is a wheel commander, so right now that is the only way you can obtain his sculptures, is in the wheel event. So you have to wait for the wheel event until it hits in your server, and after that you will be able to summon him. Now before we go any further, I just want to say that talents only apply from the primary commander. They apply to the second in command and your army, but they only apply from the primary, or they only work from the primary. That is the first thing. This is a general thing about all the commanders, not just the legendary, but what I'm going to show you now, it's also very important, because you want to know the amount of sculptures that you need for your legendary commanders and the amount of sculptures it's in the same picture for the epic, elite and advanced. Also you want to know the stars requirement for maxing out a legendary commander. This is very important, guys, and this is why I'm always advising people to work on one legendary at a time. The sculptures and the stars needed for a legendary commander to be maxed out is really high, so work on one legendary at a time. This is my advice. If I scroll up I can show you a couple of examples. I have Saladin, which is almost 50, and I don't have stars to bring him to 60. I have Double C and I have Richard. So I have three commanders that are waiting for stars to bring them to 6 star, so I can bring them to level 60. So this is why it's very important to work on one legendary at a time. Don't spread your resources, because you're not going to get anywhere, or it's going to take you too long. Right, now in terms of talent builds, before I go any further and talk about him, I also have made a talent build for him. So this is my advice. If you want to use Alexander as primary commander, this is the talent build that I would use on him. You need a full cavalry build. The reason why is because he has skill damage. So if you wanna get anywhere else from this build, I'm just gonna pop it off and then go in his talents. So for example, if you wanna go for the martial master, it decreases the active skill damage. Well, usually the active skill damage is the primary skill, but he has a secondary skill. I'm not sure if it actually negates or not, but I would not take the chances. His second skill of Alexander the Great, you know, it has a chance to deal some direct damage factor up to 1700, which is quite a lot. It's quite a huge direct damage factor, and personally I would not try to nerf this. I'm not sure if Martial Master will have an impact on it or not. There is not much information we can read if it actually does or not. Now the primary skill from Alexander the Great, I already showed how it works and I already explained about it when I've done the review when the commander was launched. So if you want to check that video, I talked a little bit more about this, and I also showed some battle reports and how it absorbs damage. I will try to put that at the end of the video, so if you want to click on it and check the review as well. Now this one, it doesn't have no description yet, but personally from what we tested on the battlefield, it does some damage. The damage is very rare, and it pretty much makes sense. Why? Because it's 1700 damage factor. If it would be a skill with a 10% chance, it would go off way too often and it would be way more powerful than it should be. So that's why I think everyone is waiting for the correct description, so everyone understands what they're trying to say with his second skill and that huge amount of direct damage factor. Now, healing effect reduction 30%. Again, we don't know if it's for him or if it's for the enemy, or if it's gonna be a debuff that is gonna apply to the enemy for a certain amount of time. We're gonna move next, and it's gonna be his third skill, which is tremendously high. That's 30% march speed on your infantry. That is really phenomenal. And then in addition to that, you also have infantry attack bonus by 30%. Now, if this infantry attack bonus is actually gonna make a huge difference, we're gonna see later on, because I have a bunch of battle reports, very well edited. So, and we're gonna talk about it, where exactly Alexander the Great fits in your army. Or where is the best you can utilize your Alexander the Great. So again, attack and march speed. Now we already know that we have Charles Martel when you unlock his expertise, that it grants another 20% march speed, and everyone is very happy because the infantry actually has a little bit of mobility. Now this is 30%, so that means that infantry has even more mobility, which is pretty nice. And then it has the fourth skill, which I say that is the most interesting skill. It says that attack increased by up to 40% when the shield is down. That is his primary skill. And when his shield is activated, the bonus changes to defense. So in theory, it means that the shield should last way longer because he's taking less damage. Having 30% defense bonus, it means he takes less damage, and then his shield should last longer. So this is also giving him a defense option, not just very offensive, because according to his second, third, and a part of the fourth skill, he has some very high offensive options. And now we're gonna go to his expertise, which also brings him a very offensive option. And the most important part is going to be the end, when it says here, at the same time Alexander puts a second shield on the second target for 2 seconds and increase the damage taken by nearby enemies up to 3 targets by 30% for 4 seconds. Well, that is really high, because the reason I'm saying is really high is because you're not gonna go somewhere solo with Alexander the Great. The reason I'm saying that is because you're definitely gonna have other marchers with you. So let's say if Alexander's shield goes down, then he's gonna debuff the nearby 3 enemy targets with 30% damage, and then you have your other marchers which are also damaging the target, and that's gonna be some really serious nuke for the next 4 seconds on that target. So it has quite a lot of utility, Alexander the Great, and his expertise is really great. Now the second question is, which for me is still a question, does the second shield applies the same debuff to 3 targets when it goes off, or it doesn't, or that is just purely a damage factor shield or damage absorption shield for 2 seconds and that's it? Because if it does the debuff as well, that is huge. That is really huge. Right, that's pretty much about his skill. Now, as I would say that preferably would be, if you wanna ask me, Alexander to be leveled up by each skill. So make the first skill 5, make the second, make the third, and then work on the fourth. Because we don't know how the second skill actually works, you might say that probably would be better to jump and max the third and then the fourth. Probably yes, but this is quite some nice direct damage factor, 1700. I would not try to skip that, to be honest. And then you have the fourth one, which already adjusts 1 level. It gives you 20% attack and 10% defense. So I would say that you're taking a risk unlocking all 4 skills and just trying to max the trying to max the third and then the fourth and skipping the second. You're taking a risk. While if you leave the fourth one for last, you already have a decent attack and defense bonus, which you're benefiting from it, and then slowly you're gonna finish it off and get the expertise of Alexander. Right, I did show you the talents, and let's move forward. Now probably the most interesting part would also be who is the best pair for Alexander the Great. Now I have prepared for you guys a couple of images, and I hope that I'm starting with the first one. No, I do apologize about it. So that's Alexander, Richard and Alexander versus yes, this is gonna be the first one. So let's make a good impression for Alexander and start with the right foot. And yes, there we go. Now I'm not sure if the players actually wanted me to show their names or not, so I prefer to hide them. So I prefer to hide that part out. So this is the reason they are edited picture. So there is 5-3-4-3 Alexander the Great with Richard primary. Richard has the most defensive build. So if you want to know what do I mean by most defensive build, you can check the description of this video and you're gonna find the Infantry masterclass. So that's the most defensive build on the Infantry, and that's the one that Richard has. Normal T5, don't get me wrong, there is no abnormal T5, but there is the special T5 units, which for example is Memlock or Elite Legionaries or various other special T5 units. This is the regular, probably should write regular, I just don't like the regular name. The normal T5 units and Memlock. So I'm not sure if you're noticing attack, defense and health, attack, defense and health, so you guys know the stats as well. Any other commanders which I don't specify, it's maxed out, they are max skills. So Richard is max skills, the other are max skills. It's just the Alexander which is 5-3-4-3. Now you're noticing that Alexander is not even maxed out, so this is not even a maxed out Alexander the Great with expertise, or all the skills maxed out, and it literally demolished those cavalries. So one-on-one, Richard and Alexander, they just literally demolished the cavalry. Now you could have said that probably Double C would have done a little bit more damage. That's very true, but I still think that Alexander would just go over it. He's not maxed. These are maxed, and he just literally demolished them. Now imagine if Alexander was maxed and he would have done the debuff as well from his 4 skill, or if he would have had the extra attack that he's missing from his skills. So this is something you guys want to keep in mind before you're working on your Alexander, or before you're making your or taking your final decision about Alexander. Now let's move forward and let's pop in the other pictures, because I have a couple more. So this is Richard and Alex versus so I have Richard and so this is versus YSG and Julius Caesar. I'm not sure if this is like the best archer pair you could actually try with Richard and Alex, but again, YSG, you know, archer commander, normal T5 archers, normal T5 infantry, the most defensive talent build, a lot of healing, attack, defense and health, attack, defense and health. Now if you personally ask me, I'm not sure if the archer actually lost, because the severely wounded is pretty much similar. So for me it's very similar, severely wounded, even though Richard and Alexander won. So I would say that with a proper archer build, which I'm gonna show you my own results against Richard and Alex. So I would say that with a proper archer build, you can literally demolish the infantry. And this is where the game is oriented, and I'm gonna talk about that at the end of the video. About the orientation of the game, I'm talking about it for like 2 months right now, since they are keep introducing legendary commanders, but I'm gonna talk more about it on the end of the game. So yeah, they managed to beat the archers, but again, I'm not sure if YSG and Julius is the best archer build. Maybe Julius is our primary, YSG secondary. I would say that would make sense a little bit, but Julius is our secondary, makes no sense to me. Right, so let's move forward with the tryouts, and we have a switch of the situation. So we have used Richard and Alex, and we still have one more Richard and Alex, which is versus Richard and Charles. So this one is Richard and Alex versus Richard and Charles. Now you're noticing that it is elite legionaries T5, and you guys know that elite legionaries, they are also special units. Being special units, they have extra attack, defense and health, not as percentage but as a normal stats, and you can check that when you check your troops on your training buildings. So elite legionaries, being special units, they have extra stats. So again, Richard and Alex, attack, defense and health, attack, defense and health, and you can see the defense and health on Richard and Charles Martel, it is stacked high up. Is the attack that is not stacked high up, because this is what Richard and Charles do. This is how they are built. They are built to be very, very tanky and very, very defensive, and that's exactly what they do. And apparently Richard and Alex, even with the extra attack on infantry, they just don't have enough to take down the elite legionaries. Again, it's normal T5 versus elite legionaries. So yeah, if this battle would have gone until the end, Richard and Alex would have lost. There is plenty of tests, and I know there is a large variety of commanders that can be used for this particular testing. This is just a couple of them. I just want to show you a couple of them. The players were out of the alliance. You know, they were trying to eliminate any kind of situation. But I'm just gonna get to the point very soon enough. So this is Alex. So we are switching the role. We are having Alex primary and Richard secondary. And what has just happened? So even YSG and Julius Caesar, which actually lost against a Richard and Alex, we swapped the roles and we used Alex primary and Richard secondary, and apparently infantry lost. Now this is one of the points that I want to reach, where still the defense talent tree on the infantry, it seems to be much better than the attack. You gain way more defensive capability and way more bonuses from the defense talent tree, which that is from Richard or Charles Martel for your infantry. So still the defense talent tree for infantry seems to be better than the attack talent tree. That's a level 60 Alexander, even though it's 5343, but on the previous one you guys saw that it won. So on this one, apparently Hill did not save him. And now this is going to be the fifth one, and this is going to be the last one from the edited pictures that I have. Again, we swapped the role. We put Alexander the Great primary, and we put Richard secondary against the same Genghis Khan, Minamoto, Memlaks, and T5. So we swapped the role, and what do we get? The infantry almost lost. Now if you pay attention to the attack, defense and health, you're noticing that it's way higher attack while Alexander the Great is primary than when Richard is primary. It's like 8%, and it would go way higher if Alexander would be maxed out. But again, you can put in compare when Richard was primary and now when Alexander is primary. So the talents from Richard or Charles Martel, they are way better for infantry than the attack path from Alexander. So therefore, the recommendation for Alexander the Great would be that he does pretty great as a second in command rather than be primary in command so far. So far from the testing or from the battle report that I have seen, this is how I would advise that Alexander should be a second in command. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot more testing, and I'm pretty sure people will find a variety of tests with Alexander the Great, and we will see where he fits best in the end. But so far, still Richard or Charles as primary for infantry, they give the best results. Now that was out of the way, and as I said, that I do have some reports as well, which I've done on my live stream. So this is YSG and Frederick versus Richard and Charles. Now we go on the troops buff. So my Archer attack, defense and health 137, 22 and 80 versus 200 attack, 145 defense and 80. So this is a 5-5-5-1 Alexander the Great. Now again, these Alexanders are not maxed out either on this one or on the one that I showed you guys, but point being, archers can beat infantry, and again I'll show you again, archers can beat infantry. Charles and Richard, they just went down the bottom. What I'm trying to say is, according to all these reports that I show you guys, Alexander is so highly oriented on taking down the Cavs. Now you saw when Alexander was second and Charles was primary, you saw that report when it went against Genghis Khan and Minamoto, that they brought them like 100,000 severely wounded. Let me just pop it up again so you guys know which one I'm talking about, since I'm gonna talk about it. And this is where I'm trying to go. Okay, so it's this one that I'm talking about. This is where I'm trying to go. Now imagine if that Alexander was maxed out. Imagine the amount of severely wounded or the amount of damage it could have inflicted to the cavalry. So my point is, and my final decision about Alexander is, that he is a very high counter to cavalry, a very high counter. So this is when you want to invest in your Alexander, or the first thing you want to think about your Alexander when you want to spend your resources on him, is this is how they built him, this is how he's oriented. So a very hard counter, or a very high counter, how you want to call it, for cavalry. It has been called, and people has been complaining that and they are calling Rise of Cavalry, because they have introduced all these cavalry commanders, and now they are introducing infantry commanders, because we have Alexander and we have Constantine the First on the Mightiest Governor event. And according to the last update, which is probably hit live, or is gonna hit live, we probably have 2 Archer commanders. And this is the end point of the video, when I said that I want to talk about where the game is being oriented. Now the reason I'm saying where the game is going, or how far the game is going to go, is because they are introducing a lot of cavalry, they have introduced a lot of infantry, and now they are introducing a lot of archer commanders, plus support commanders in the same time, or with support talent trees. I have already done the math, and I'm not gonna say them now in this video. I don't want to make this video very long, but once the Archer Commander are gonna be released, players with the Cavalry one, I am already building 4 marches of Cavalry. So with the actual Cavalry commanders, if I want to, I could go to 5. I just don't have the commanders, but I could go to 5 marches of cavalry. So all my 5 marches on the field could be only cavalry if I want to. With the infantry commanders that are coming out, if you want to, you can have up to 5 infantry marches on the field. With the new archers commanders that are coming out, you can also have 5 infantry marches on the field if you want to. And with the support commanders that are coming out, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be more support commanders like Ethelflaed, I'll bring for example, and you also have Saladin, which is support, and they're also introducing Constantine, which is also support. We also have Joan of Arc, which is also support. So with all these support commanders that are coming out, they are trying to give specific role for players. So each player will have the option, or we have the capability to choose one role into the game. So either you want to choose the role of be a cavalry commander, so you can go in with 5 marchers of cavalry, or you want to be an archer commander, you want to go in with 5 archers, or infantry, going with 5 infantry, you will be able to have this possibility or have this option. And you might just want to be a support. So if you want to be a support player, then you'll also have this possibility on being a support player with the amount of support commanders that are introducing in the game. So they're trying to give specific roles to players. Now going back and ending Alexander the Great, so far from all the testing that has been done, he excels the best as second in command to Richard. Apparently still the defense talent tree just provides way more bonuses to infantry, and it just works much better. Until more testing will be done, we can tell, but so far Richard primary and Alexander the Great as secondary seems to be the best. You also have a more attack bonus from infantry while you're using Richard, and you have a lot of defense option plus healing, which is the best thing ever for your infantry. Right, more testings will be done. I would also like to see a very interesting build with Alexander primary and let's say Frederick secondary. This is another interesting build that I would like to try out, but it's gonna take a while until I'm gonna max out Alexander, so it's gonna take time until we can see that. And there's other builds that I would like to try them out and see how they actually excel on the battlefield, but so far Richard primary and Alexander secondary seems to be the best option. Any other builds you want to make with your Alexander the Great, they can work. So let's say you have Charles Martel. I was told that they actually don't work that great, but if you don't have any other option for your infantry, then that's pretty much what you have to use. Or let's say you have Mundo, which is maxed out, and you got your Alexander. You can use them. It doesn't mean they will excel or they will give you the best results on the battlefield. It is the best you can offer for your infantry. So that's pretty much about this video. Again, he's a great commander, and as I mentioned, he is a hard counter for Cavalry. Until next time, my friends, this is your boy Garrison signing off, and I hope you guys do enjoy this video, and peace out, yo. Take care. I'll see you guys on the next one.